Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Notebook. I'm Marc-Antoine Godin with Arpin Basu on this Monday, May 19th. Actually, Arpin, we're recording, full disclosure, we're recording this podcast on Sunday night, a few minutes after we've seen yet another meltdown from the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, they're eternal providers of Schadenfreude. It's almost, and you start almost feeling bad. I felt Schadenfreude after Game 5. Now I look at them and I'm just, I feel pity.
Well, it's not even a feel pity. It's just like I don't know if I've said it on the podcast before, but I've said it before. Like, you look at the Leafs, and you couldn't hope to get through a rebuild as efficiently and swiftly as they did. To go from rock bottom in the league, pick up your franchise player, like hit rock bottom the right year, get the number one overall pick, get some lottery luck, get your franchise player, get another franchise player with a pretty shrewd pick of Mitch Marner, whatever you think of him, a shrewd pick of William Nylander, whatever you think of him. Like, these are Morgan Riley in a draft that's otherwise completely unspectacular. They wind up with the one player who, not the only one, but one of the only ones that in the top of that draft that really makes an impact. So they kind of nail that. They just made these series of good moves, like over and over and over again. Some of them fortunate, some of them shrewd, some of them smart, but you can do all that and a rebuild can still fail.
Yeah.
Like, rebuilding in and of itself is not the answer to anything. You need so many things to go right. And even if you do everything right, sometimes it just ends up wrong the way it has for the Leafs. And I can't really think of, there's been times, the flat cap kind of screwed them and they couldn't really build out the depth around their team and whatever, but it's another example. And we've seen many, but you can go through a rebuild and do everything right and have all the balls fall for you, literally in the lottery sense for Matthews, and you still won't get it right. Now there's going to be massive change in Toronto, but that core should have won a cup by now. Really should have. And
yeah, well, the Hockey News had headline in 2018, it's not a matter of if, but when and how many. So they were saying plan the parade. So 9 years later, they won 2 playoff rounds, and they just lost again to the Florida Panthers this time. And so we've got our 4 conference finalists, and we decided today to take a look at those 4 conference finalists and see if there are trends or lessons that the Canadiens could take from who those 4 conference finalists are. Whether it's by their roster construction, or whether it's by their with their style of play, I think that there are different ways to tackle this. So we brought up different items that we could focus on, and let's start with one that's been very visible. I mean, obviously, top of mind is tonight's game on Sunday night, where we saw Seth Jones playing an incredible game at the blue line for the Florida Panthers. Big guy, and the size on the backhand seems to be forever a thing. It's not just this year, but you look at big blue line. It's been a brand for Dallas. You see it from Florida over and over again. But the big guys on the blue line seems to be a thing, huh?
It is every year. I mean, Vegas built a big rugged blue line. There's a lot of this is, I think, a trend not only this year but in past years with different teams, that when you get to the Final Four, even the Leafs blue line is a big rugged blue line. You had Brandon Carlo, you had Tanev, you had everything they added to address what was their big real position of weakness, it still wasn't enough. But still, that was a pretty good blue line. And so, like when you think of the Canadians, for now, there's Carey and Hutson, but really, you have to wonder what the Canadians wonder when you watch Lane Hutson in the playoffs. And, I think he had an up and down series in that playoff series. At times seemed a little overwhelmed by the physicality and just everything going on around him. But you don't see defensemen like that at this stage of the playoffs very often. And
No.
that's got to be going through their minds a little bit as we approach the time where he is eligible to sign a contract extension. So it's like and year after year in the playoffs, you're reminded of that fact. I think you look at the Four Nations tournament and the way Adam Fox kind of wilted in that environment for Team USA. It's another sort of red flag when it comes to, what can you reasonably expect from Lane Hutson in this kind of an environment? And there's nothing to say that he can't play in this kind of environment. It's just that every year we see these teams that are built big on the blue line getting to this stage of the playoffs, and it just makes I think it's definitely got to be food for thought in the Canadiens front office. Like, where does our stud guy fit in? Like where does our likely Calder winner fit in here? And how much can we actually commit to this guy until we know how he's going to perform at this time of year?
Well, I think that Hutson has showed plenty to encourage the Canadians to, to sign this kid for a long term and for a lot of money. To me, it's more a question of how do you surround him, and how over the course of this season they sent the message to Logan Mayu in Laval. You better round out your game and not focus too much on offense because you might not be a power play one guy when you reach the NHL because we've got Lane Hutson. You remember our conversation with Arbor Jackeye saying, well,
Yeah.
maybe that my offensive instincts or my offensive touch, I won't get to showcase it all that much because, Lane will be running the show here. Having maybe other guys that are capable of stepping up just in case, having offensively some insurance policies on the blue line might not be such a bad idea because you don't know if in the playoffs putting all your chips into this guy will be the way to go because of just the way the game is played.
Well, the thing with Arbor that I actually remembered, we should talk about Arbor because I think it actually does apply to this, right? I mean, that's what is so attractive about Arbor Jackeye, right? Is that if he can find the line between what makes him valued, what makes him intimidating, and what works in the playoffs, he could be an extremely valuable player for this team. And just with that size, it's what the Canadians like about him. But when we were talking, I remember the conversation both of us had with JF Hood.
Yeah.
When he was talking about him and how he was referring to him that like that's a first round pick and he has like offensive skill and like this is like he was just marveling at the fact that the Canadians were able to get this guy undrafted. Like it's just like it was mind boggling to him because of his offense.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that's shifted, but to back up what you said, like he does have some puck moving ability, like he has decent feet offensively. He can move pucks. Like he has the odd turnover. He has the odd brain fart with the puck for sure. But this is why the Arbor Jackeye project is so worth it and why everyone tends to freak out whenever he's slighted in any way is not the same reason I think that the Canadians are trying to work with him. Like they want to get him to a place where he can help them get to this stage of the playoffs and be a reliable decision maker in all facets of the game, offensively, with the puck, without the puck, when to be intimidating and be tough and be menacing and when not to, all these decisions that you have to make in these high tension environments. If he can nail that, then you have the prototype for the types of defensemen that we see still playing in the playoffs right now. You mentioned Mayu. It's a similar conversation, right? And you know, who knows? Like I think in both their cases, and they're similar in the sense that the way Martin St. Louis wanted to play defense, like the guy who struggled the most at the beginning of the season with the defensive zone stuff was Arbor Jackeye. And to some extent, not only him, but I think some of the players spoke to Martin at some point and said, listen, it's just not working. Like, I don't think everyone gets it. We need to shift this. And they went back to kind of a man on man. It wasn't totally a man on man, but it was more man on man than it was before. And I remember the one guy I spoke to the night it happened. It was, I think they beat the Blues 5-2 that night. And I went to Jackeye. I was like, hey, the defensive zone looked good. Like you guys changed some things. Like, yeah, we simplified it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just after Martin had that press conference after practice where he's like, you can't play in this league if you can't make these reads, blah, blah, blah. But I question, like, and we'll talk about style of play in a second, but this was a style of play issue, right? But it was messing with personnel. And Mayu's a very similar type of guy. Like, he's going to struggle with the same things that Jackeye was struggling with, like how quickly he can make a read in the defensive zone, how quickly he can determine when to pressure, when to stay with your guy, whatever. But when you have a physical specimen like he is, with the offensive talents that he has, to what extent, if any, and I'm actually asking this question, I don't know the answer to this question, do you need to adjust your style of play to accommodate guys like this because they're so rare and they're so valuable at this time of year? Like, do they have to make sure that they can play a way where Mayu can have success defensively, or do they need to stick to their guns? And is the style of play more important? And you bring in guys that can play that style of play.
I think it's the latter.